Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show, the Cyber Kriya, on the home of enterprise cybersecurity wisdom, one podcast at a time. So today, the special guest I have on the show is somebody I've been trying to get him early on the top five. For some reason, we are not able to. He's my friend. He's my buddy. He's the maybe expert we all need, but maybe we don't think about him or whatever work he does. It's because it's just there, right? It's just like by default you assume those pieces are done in a way it should be done, at least for the SAP ecosystem, if not beyond. A network security, a infra security, a brain, a technical brain, which we all assume in the cloud world, in the SaaS world, it's all there. It's not even visible. I have done speaking with him. He's a great leader. I would say he's a technical geek. If I can, I probably let him define himself because he's so he wears multiple hats. I have been fortunate enough to represent our community along with him. I do want to take his brain on a lot of things which I personally lag. So without further ado, please join me to welcome Julian Petersohn on the show. Julian, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for that intro.
So Julian, for the audience, do you want to introduce yourself who may not know you?
Sure. My name is Julian Petersohn. I'm working at Fortinet as a principal systems engineer, specialized more or less in the infrastructure security and especially cloud. And yeah, I'm living in the SAP world for many, many years now and trying to combine infrastructure and the SAP application world, especially in security.
So Julian, as I was saying, infrastructure network piece, at least in the SAP security world, because SAP security has been all about role-based security, application-based security. Something do you think we don't give enough importance as we should, even in the cloud world where we're moving to Rise and all the SaaS and the PaaS offering. So I want to start with that. Like, what's your thought on what you do and maybe the problem you see as a infra network security expert supporting the SAP ecosystem? What's your first response would be if I have to ask that question and then begin our podcast today?
Well, I think it's difficult. So let me start that. The infrastructure is the base layer everything runs on. So if the network doesn't work, I mean, we have seen it in the last couple of weeks, right? AWS, Azure, when it's down because the infrastructure goes down, like the DNS system doesn't work anymore correctly, well, your SAP is also down and you cannot reach it anymore. So it's like a bit of the base layer for all the infrastructure. And I think one difficulty is that it has been always there. It is there. And for the many, many years now, we can just rely on it. It's there. It's just working magically. So we can build on top of that. And also, somehow, I would say with the SaaS and PaaS world, we try to get rid of the layer so that we do not see the infrastructure anymore. We just have to take care of the application layer. But it's still there. Someone has to maintain it, run it, and keep it up and running and alive and secure for sure. And the other part is that usually the infrastructure and also the network and everything else is maintained by a completely different team, which is quite often decoupled from all the application guys. And as you mentioned, yes, SAP, everyone looks at roles and GRC and segregation of duties and having the secure business processes. But what happens to the service if it's exposed to the internet? What happens if that's not proper secured because no one knows about the system? I think there are some prominent cases where exactly that happened in the last couple of years.
So if I'm a SAP customer or maybe responsible for securing my SAP, going on a transformation journey, as we all know, SAP is moving to S4. All the customers either are on S4 or they are on the S4 transformation journey. As you said, that's kind of outsourcing these infra and network part of the whole different layers, right? The whole shared responsibility model, right? You say this it's not visible, and as we say, it's not visible, so we think it's all done, it's all good, right? Is there one thing I should do? I know there's not one thing you have to do. Security is never one. This is multiple. It's always layered, right? But if you have to start, we have to always start somewhere, right? So if I'm going on a S4 transformation journey, maybe on Rise PC model, what questions I should be asking to either SAP or to my partner who's helping me on the transformation journey?
So looking at Rise, right? You're basically moving your systems into the hands of SAP. So when SAP takes care of for you about all the infrastructure and everything below, you only have to maintain again the application, which is great. But the big question here is, how's your data coming to that? How do you reach that SAP system at the end? And what happens if that cloud, for whatever reason, goes down? How do you take care of your latency? Looking into logistics, for example, in data warehouses, and not data warehouses, and logistic warehouses. Where the people scanning the packages and trying to get as many out there as fast as they can to ship them to the customer. Let's speak about latency, right? The connectivity from those local on-prem sites into those cloud environments, and is that secure connected, or is it just a wide open environment? Same like also with if you have different stores out there over the whole planet, for example. How do the employees connect to maintain all the different products they have in their shelves? All the logistics, all the stuff, because there will be always something on-prem. At least us as humans. I think we're far away from virtualizing ourselves. Even that's a dream, right? But I think we're quite far away from that part. So there will be still some physical component we as humans can interact with. Is it a handheld? Is it a phone, watch, whatever? And how is the data securely accessed in that RISE environment? How can I get there? That's, I think, one of the biggest challenges in some cases. And I think one of the critical asks, how can I get a secure connectivity and a reliable connectivity to that?
So I know I would be working with SAP, and SAP is kind of on the hook to provide all those infra and network layer, and they are doing pretty good job on whatever controls and everything they have on their side. But as a customer, because in SAP, what I have seen, or what when we talk to the other customers and see, like in the whole transformation journey, we may not even have cyber involved, or maybe my network guys involved as much as they should. We always assume this is on cloud, and we just connect it, right? So anything you wanna? I know this is.
What I can hardly recommend is taking a box of donuts, going to your cybersecurity guys and say, look guys, we are going to RISE. That's how the architecture looks. Here's some donuts. What do you think? Can you help us? Because that's a good point. You should always involve them directly from the first point. We're speaking about connectivity. How do you get the systems over there? Do you need extra bandwidth maybe? You don't want to take the company down for the next 5 days because you're uploading your 20 terabyte big HANA machine. Or is it possible or not? We had, for example, I had a customer who had the issue that at that time, AWS only provided 6 VPN endpoints, but he had 12 sites for factories. Well, that's a small piece of limitation. How can you work around that? And that's where the infrastructure is quite important. Another one is when you go usually to RISE or do the S4 transformation, you're switching to Fiori usually. So you're going web-based. You're going away from the legacy SAP GUI. And with Fiori, you're now talking about HTML5, HTTP-based APIs, like SOA, REST, OData, whatever. That's different. You need to handle that different. And also now you have a cloud-based system. After COVID, we all learned working from anywhere in the world is in certain jobs possible, like in ours, for example. And how do I allow my employees to access now that system? Yeah, maybe I want to allow them from anywhere that they can put in their vacation request. Cool. How do I secure now that system? How do I expose it to the public? Or do I want to expose it to the public? Do we have mechanisms to protect if we expose it? And all of their stuff, that's exactly where the cybersecurity and infrastructure guys are there, and they know about that. They are only shy touching SAP because they see that as a huge, big, scary box, I would say.
Black box, is still a black box. So do you think that is changing with the cloud adoption on the SAP, or is SAP is still a black box for the InfoSec guys and the network guys and the infra guys? What's your experience? Is it still black box?
It's still, because to be fair, now when the system was on-prem, they saw at least some servers, and they saw there's a database, there's a machine, there's some communication going back and forth. Now with BTP, it's like, well, there's a cloud connector. I have no idea what BTP is doing. It's somewhere in the cloud. It's completely out of visibility for us, even that, because quite often another challenge when we speak about BTP, who's buying BTP? It's usually not IT or cyber. It's the app team. So quite often, even BTP is a full blind spot in a company because it's not bought by the right department. So because app is buying that just with their own corporate credit card, and then it's there. And IT doesn't even know that it exists, and there's another cloud vendor in the game.
So you brought two very great points, which maybe I want to cover more into it. So you said first cloud connector, and then the second one you mentioned BTP, which is the where all the innovations, all the AI, all the custom, everything is going to happen in the new SAP's world, right? So let's start with the cloud connector. So I'm going on S4 journey. I may have cloud connector on my old side of the legacy world, maybe on-prem or maybe on whatever hyperscaler I have. If I move to Rise, does the cloud connector would be on the Rise environment? It should be on my on-prem, or it should be owned by me as a customer. Like what you have seen on that architecture perspective. Like what is your take on that? Because I feel like that is the key to Castle, right? And this is where everything is coming to my on-prem from Rise, or that's not correct, Julian?
Well, that's right. When we look into Rise, usually you have, or SAP provides you with a cloud connector in Rise, which makes definitely sense because, at least in my opinion, because they're your SAP systems, right? So the idea is with SAP's clean core approach to do not develop custom apps or having a lot of customization done within the SAP system itself. It's like you want to have something custom, build it on BTP, which is easier to adopt, scale, and adjust. And to be fair, many years back when I was an SAP basis consultant and we did migrations, customizations and custom code is one of the most challenging part in the whole migration or upgrade scenario. Speaking about that, so there is the cloud connector because you want to have the best connectivity from BTP to your data, right? But now all your data is not only stored in the SAP system. There could be even like OT devices. Going back to manufacturing, those devices need to report back maybe directly to BTP, or there's some BTP applications that need to look into into the data from the OT, or maybe third-party applications which are not running in Rise. So there could be two cloud connectors now, one running in your environment, your data center, and one running in Rise, hosted and maintained by SAP. You can have multiple cloud connectors depending on the use case. So there you have basically both roles, right? One is your responsibility, the other one's SAP one.
So what is cloud connector if you have to define in layman terms? Just like a private tunnel? What it is, if you have to explain.
A proxy which sets up a secure tunnel into SAP Cloud so that you do not have to expose any servers publicly, that you can reach it from SAP's cloud environment. Either basically BTP primarily.
Okay. Is it like it's not a firewall, right? Just a
No.
proxy?
It's really just a proxy. It has some basic masking features, but it definitely has. To be fair, I guess SAP would disagree, but I would say it has no security features at all. Yes, it does encryption, but just encryption for the tunnel and of the data in between. But there's more on security than just encryption of the data, because even encrypted data could be malicious, right?
So if I'm a more security, aware, or I have more compliance and security need, should I be thinking about like putting a WAF firewall somewhere around cloud connector, or is it just cloud connector sitting? As you say, you can have multiple cloud connector, but what's your kind of, if you have to just say you have all the money in the budget, you can just put whatever you want to put it. So do you recommend something more around it or no?
If you have enough money, build your own environment, never expose it to the public. No, just kidding. But even then, it's not secure. Build your own intranet. No, just kidding. So what I usually recommend is, so on BTP, it's a platform as a service. So the infrastructure is, you execute your code there. You build your app, and that's where it's made for, and that's what it's great on. But you do not own the lower levels, basically. What you want to do, let's, for example, think of SAP Fiori Launchpad. Awesome idea. You have now your Fiori UI, easily accessible for all your users with great availability, hosted by SAP in the cloud. Awesome. But when you need to access your data or your apps, so basically the backend system, it uses Cloud Connector to connect from the Fiori Launchpad, runs in the BTP basically, through the Cloud Connector connecting to your SAP system. Now, if you own the Cloud Connector, or at least the connectivity from the Cloud Connector to your system, I would recommend you to implement there, if it's HTTP-based traffic, a web application firewall, 100%. Because it's not SAP's job, looking into shared responsibility, to monitor and filter all the user input taken by your users or whoever you expose that application to. And there is no web application firewall between the public and, for example, Fiori Launchpad. SAP would never be able to handle that different dynamic requirements every customer has. That's impossible. So whatever can come through as an input, just as an example, which then gets forwarded to the backend system, that could be a query for a search term or whatever, would then pass through the cloud connector, unfiltered, and then go to the SAP system. And that's exactly the point where you want to be sure that this is not like a malicious request, for example, or something malicious is coming through. Or even think of, it could be that the app somehow is malicious to server-side request forgery. Well, that could get passed through to your backend system or request smuggling. You want to protect it, that this doesn't happen at that point. So you want to filter stuff like that out. And that's why definitely set up a web application firewall to do API protection and whatever comes through on HTTP base. Definitely. Same for non-web, speaking about RFC, for example, or DIAC. Even there, I would recommend having at least a normal firewall, like a network firewall in between, and make sure that the cloud connector can only connect to systems it should be able to connect to.
So that firewall we are referring, so there are multiple firewalls. Again, this is not a area I think that's why I seek your help all the time. What firewall we are referring to? And there's a whole web application firewall just to protect your APIs and your Fiori and whatever web-based HTTP. Then there is a network firewall, I believe, right? So which firewall, on where we are putting which firewall, if you want to maybe just briefly touch on both. Okay.
Just what's the difference? So the point is that like HTTP is usually on layer 7 from the OC layer model, which means HTTP has its own characteristics. So, and looking into what a web application firewall does, it takes an HTTP packet. It usually doesn't care that much on is there now the right TCP flag set or not. It usually looks, okay, that's an HTTP request. What is written in the header? Is there a fishy username in there? Or do I see some characteristics or certain pattern that looks like a known attack? Or is that a violation against my definition for that API JSON style configuration? And if we look into what I call a normal firewall, like a network firewall, that usually sits on lower levels, for example, layer 3, layer 4. And what it does, it looks into the TCP and UDP packets. It looks, is the flag correctly set? Is there maybe some denial of service ongoing, right? Not against the application, but it looks especially on the byte stream and looks into those packages to do an intrusion detection, for example, and prevention. But what I've seen a lot, and I think everyone else would agree, such intrusion detection systems, they can prevent like HTTP or API-based attacks, but they're definitely not great in that. Because such packages are sometimes split into multiple, or it's just something different because you do not care about all the flags and stuff, the whole TCP stuff before. It's really just a payload you're looking into. That's why 2 firewalls would be important, because RFC and DIAC, so the SAP GUI protocol, or well, SNC is the encryption for the 2 of them, are not web-based. They are their own TCP-based data exchange protocols from SAP.
So I guess I always keep saying to my guests, at least for the first episode, like we probably have to do another one, maybe more deep dive, maybe with more diagram and everything, Julian. So I know I will love to have you again. Maybe we'll just show some architecture diagram to make it easy for our audience.
I can also prepare some diagrams for which SAP protocol resides in the OSI model and stuff like that.
Because I feel like, as we have been saying, this seems like one thing which is not visible, and in the BTP, in the whole cloud first world, maybe customers not even thinking about it, right? Unless they have, they have good whatever cyber and they are involved in the whole process. And as you said, the BTP is probably being bought by application team, not even the cyber or the IT team. They're not even there in those whole conversations, right? So hopefully, I think you agree with that, Julian. I think you were going to say something.
I agree. Maybe another interesting part here is what I've learned when that whole cloud thing came up, right? Looking back to when AWS started many, many years ago. The big quote there was on the headline, you do not need any next-gen firewall or network firewalls anymore because the cloud secures everything with authorizations. I was like, wait a second, how should that work? I mean, yes, looking into, for example, AWS or even on BTP, you build your app as a microservice. So your app itself will be only your app, right? Containerized or compact to what it is, that process basically. And this one can hold an identity or this app has an identity. And you then can set up the authorization that your app 1 is allowed to connect to database 1 and app 2, and that it is allowed to do certain things, maybe. But what many people then tend to forget is, yes, I have now the authorization in my house to open certain doors. But what I bring through the doors, no one inspects. And that's exactly what a firewall usually is doing, right? Many people think that a firewall is only looking is port A or B open or closed, and it's only doing that. No, a firewall, or especially next-gen firewalls, doing much more. They're looking, is that the right packet? Is that what it should go through? Or is that maybe some bad malicious thing that's trying to come through the door, like a virus or so? High level speaking. Same on BTP, by the way. There's everything we look into Cloud Foundry. It's all identity based. And there is basically no web application firewall in between. Either your application is written without any vulnerabilities, or you will be lucky.
So let's just deep dive on the BTP, because you have been referring BTP a lot. So Cloud Connector, we understood at least some part. We'll maybe try to deep dive in the next session if you are. I think I think already said yes to come on the show again, right? So I will take yes, right? So we'll deep dive on maybe more on the cloud, but let's just touch BTP for today's episode. You said Cloud Foundry is security is all identity based. So let's just expand on it. Can we put a firewall in front of BTP applications or no? Like if I'm building my APIs and whatever I'm doing with the different services, what I can do from the network and infra perspective on top of with what we already have from SAP BTP offering?
It's complex. Officially, no, because okay, it's difficult. Without going too deep in the technical stuff, but as soon as you can deploy a container, there is a way to somehow deploy something like a reverse proxy or like a firewall.
Okay.
And the web application firewall is just a reverse proxy with security. So those capabilities are there. But it's still then the question, does it fit with your flow, right? So you need something that matches your DevOps flow in that case, that you deploy together. There could be, for example, also the ability to use a SaaS web application firewall. If you use a custom domain, for example, that only your application would be available via, shop.cybercrea.org, for example, then only that domain redirects to your web application firewall, and this then forwards the traffic to the BTP app. But what you can't do right now, I hope that changes in the future, is that you can allow access to certain BTP apps only from certain IP addresses. Right now it would be still open. So if I know the BTP URL, I still can bypass basically the web application firewall, which would break that whole construct. It's a bit challenging, let me say that. It's a bit easier on KEMA, because KEMA is the really high-level Kubernetes runtime from SAP. Kubernetes is made to run containers, and there are possibilities to deploy like a firewall or a web application firewall. That's pretty easy to chain it up front. But on BTP, basically Cloud Foundry, it's not that easy because it's not made to do it like that, I would say. SAP tries their best. If you look into the app router has, for example, some cross-site scripting protection and some pretty nice authorization and authentication mechanism built in there with the Access UAA. But it's still, right, there could be top 10 is more than just cross-site scripting, which could be an issue.
So for, I think, somebody who may not understand, I think you mentioned about Cloud Foundry, you say KEMA. So these are two environments you can pick if you are deploying BTP in your environment, right? So Cloud Foundry is more like open source. I don't know, what is Cloud Foundry versus KEMA? If you want to expand on it, KEMA is the Kubernetes, I get it. But what is Cloud Foundry then?
Cloud Foundry is just one layer above. Cloud Foundry offers you just a runtime where you have, to describe it easy, you throw your code there and it runs.
Okay. So runtime environment.
It's basically exactly a runtime environment. It's a bit like Kubernetes. You can deploy containers. There is still an option to do serverless stuff where you can just run code snippets and have some API routes and so on. Cloud Foundry, it's not that new. It's quite old, to be fair. It's many years ago when VMware started their cloud journey. They kicked off with Cloud Foundry. It's in the meantime, it's part of the Linux Foundation, so it's an open source project, and it's pretty cool because exactly that point, right? I as a developer, or I want to build an app. I don't want to take care of, I need a VM, I need to set it up, I need to maintain it, I need to patch it, I need to connect it, I need to secure it, I need to know which ports are used and all the complexity of those different services and with each other. And that's exactly what Cloud Foundry removes. Cloud Foundry just says, well, yeah, you run your Python app, your Flask app, and you have a database, and there's another service, maybe a SAP HANA Cloud, where you connect to. So you can easily set up a binding between the two, and then you can access the HANA database and have your application storing data there or accessing the data. And SAP even add another abstraction layer with the CAP programming, just to throw another words in.
Mm-hmm. All three-letter acronyms, right? Yeah.
Which is based on Node.js and React, for Node.js for server and React for front-end technology. And that even adds more abstraction layer to make it still even easier to deploy complex applications and program and develop that. The idea is just really to say, hey, there's an app. You shouldn't care about everything else. Just build your app, build your dream, which is on one part pretty cool because that makes your life definitely easier or less stressful. Because keep in mind, remember the old days when you had to set up SAP and those 20 weeks up front where you had the discussions with the infrastructure guys, which VMs you need or servers, which hardware, the switches, the connectivity, blah, blah, the whole list. And that's completely gone away. You just consume what you want to consume and build your app, and that's it. On the other way, how do you run that now secure? Because the runtime is basically SAP's responsibility. Everything above is your responsibility. So if that code is malicious, or not malicious, that code it could be even malicious, but if that code is vulnerable, well, or you use Log4j, the old version, right? That's your responsibility to fix that and find that out. And then we come back to the challenge, which I've seen as, well, yes, but cybersecurity doesn't even know that BTP exists. So they do not even monitor it. They don't see it. And suddenly someone breaches your company because there was a dev guy deploying stuff on BTP and no one even knows that that company uses BTP. And that's not SAP's fault. That's just that whole communication silo challenging complexity fault, basically.
Now I get it. Why did you say it's still a black box and more in the BTP world, right? Because this whole Cloud Foundry, the whole Kubernetes may have been around for some time, but seems like for the SAP, at least for the SAP basis, SAP security, and maybe somebody who would be responsible for making sure all securities is buttoned up in that BTP environment, not the cyber guys. This is all new for them, right? So I don't think the team who's responsible for spinning up those services, configuring it, developing it, because they're coming from the SAP world, right? Or like, what's your experience on seeing like who's responsible for securing BTP? Is it the SAP team? Is it the cyber team? Or say, I know there's always a thing like who owns it, right? Like why cyber is not involved in the BTP security? Like what we can do, Julian?
Very good question. So what I've seen quite often, it's usually owned by SAP bases because cyber says, well, it has that three letters SAP in there. I'm not responsible for it. It's application, which is, in my opinion, wrong. It should be owned, in my opinion, at least for security. Cybersecurity should be a stakeholder, definitely, at least. I'm fine if bases they're involved as well, and they should work together on that because it's an SAP world. So it's also quite similar to other SAP things. And I would say the understanding for an SAP person versus a non-SAP person, the SAP person understands better the concepts and the ideas behind that and why they use BTP, right? But at the end, to be fair, BTP is just the same if you go for AWS, because in BTP, right, if we look into like our common S4HANA stack, you have your ABAP programs. You have a little bit of Fiori for front end, which is written in some style of JavaScript. Well, yes, custom language, special things. It's a very business-focused language. We look into ABAP and stuff and data-centric. That's nothing like you would give to an embedded C++ programmer, but that's different. And that's not like every other application infrastructure you would bring to your security. SAP is its own world. But if we now look with BTP, well, I can run there on my Python. I can run there my Java, my Next, my Node.js, and other stuff. It's like open. I can deploy anything there. If I would like to, I could start running my whole company infrastructure in KEMA. I mean, if it runs on Kubernetes before, it runs on KEMA as well. So it should be, in my opinion, cyber, but they try to push it usually away because it's SAP. I'm not sure if they fear it. Sometimes I don't know, to be honest. But they should look into and have a big eye and a big look into what is that. Because it's the same like if you decide now to go for DigitalOcean because you think it's pretty cool. Yeah, it's a new hyperscaler. Who should own that? Is it you? Or is it your IT security?
Yeah.
Ideally, IT security, right?
And even the basis, I don't think they come from that whole. Oh, I think we will probably try to cover one of your. I think background. You said you are a basis guy, but like I don't think they have the same thought, same understanding of this new word as the way IT security would have it, right? I think for them maybe just spinning up the service because there is a need for whatever I don't know, SAP build or whatever BPA, and then I don't think they're thinking about it. Cloud Foundry versus KEMA, and then the security things you mentioned. This is definitely a session we have to deep dive, Julian.
Well,
But
definitely. And you always know security is always the next annoying part to some other finance departments in the company because they
yeah,
always block and slow down everything. I saw it on Reddit. Yeah, security introduced now in our DevOps pipeline and use code security scanner. Now it takes 5 times longer. Yes, you could maybe optimize it, but there is a reason why you should do that. And yeah, it's flagging all the way CVEs from 2020. Yes, maybe you should get rid of those libraries from 2020, which are vulnerable. Maybe would help to secure your application. It's like, yes, it's annoying. Security is really annoying. I mean, we know it from the airport, right? To think of security wouldn't be there. It would be much faster. But we need it. There's a reason why it's there and why it should be there and why you want to protect your data and your assets and your employees from certain stuff.
I think one thing I always try to emphasize is like the ownership, right? As we are hearing it, like it's just still seems like still a black box for the cyber team, the whole BTP, all the cloud word. But who's like, if I have to, like, if I'm a customer, I'm listening, I'm watching, I'm hearing you, Julian, on this show, and I'm the SAP person responsible for securing my BTP environment? Is it like I just reach out, you say, take a donut and then go out to them? So is it like something like that's how we should be doing? Because they may not own it today, but it's like a shared responsibility even within your organization too, right? It's a team effort. It's not just one. It's not just basic. It's not IT security. It's the collective. It's a joint effort, right? So what we should be doing apart from just talking to them? Is it more learning, more awareness, and like teaching them our word and learning from their word, and like have policies, and like where should we start? It seems like I'm hearing this list. This seems like it's a lot of work.
Well, it could be a lot, but it's not that much. I think one problem is that SAP always gets sold to other departments in the company that's super complex. And then there's also maybe some politics within the company that say, well, no, never go into my domain. That's my area. Don't touch it, right? And I think I can sometimes understand why it's that case, but I don't think that's great. Because if you're at the end, it's the same number, right? If the money wins or loses, you all profit or not profit from that whole thing. And it's not like a race between the departments. So, and I think that if both work together, it gets much easier and they can be faster in the goal at the end than working against each other. Maybe story from my past. So I was an external consultant and we were running at that customer the Linux and VMware infrastructure. With two people together. We got a call from the guys who are running the web shop and say, hey, we have super big latency issues. We have performance problems. Can you help us? So, well, usually it's the network, right? So we say, okay, let's set up a troubleshooting call. We took in a guy from the network. We took in a guy from networking, from the firewall team especially, from the cybersecurity team. We took in one of us, or basically two of us, one for the infrastructure below, for storage, compute, and so on, and one for the Linux part. And one of the devs, and say, let's look together. Where can we see bottlenecks? And we were like 5-6 people at the end in the call, and it took us half an hour, and we fixed it. because we figured out that the SQL statements, queries they are doing from the front end to the database are so many that the intrusion prevention of the firewall is overloaded because it tries to inspect them and slows the whole process down. So we say, okay, well, that doesn't make sense that it looks in there. Let's exclude that. There we go. It was super fast again. But it was only because everyone was sitting in one room and we were able to fix it because we didn't have to move tickets around. That doesn't slow down. So work together, explain on a high level. They do not need to know in depth how BTP works. So as a basis guide, go to them, explain what it is. What is BTP and why you're using that? They usually accept it, especially when you come with donuts. And hey, we want to secure it. Can you help us with that? There's a security guide from SAP. SAP has and provides a lot of security guides out there. And there is also one for BTP where they provide recommendations like the setups of the sub accounts and how you can use them and so on. And they can say like, hey, look, we want to deploy their certain apps. Can you help us like implementing your code scanning solution we have or you're using right now for our tools so that we can combine it better and optimize it together? For example, makes your application code much more safe. And when it's more safe, the less issues you are getting. Just as a simple example, or they know maybe even how other cloud platforms are secured and have their lessons learned on them already. So they can help you on the other end with their lessons learned on, hey, look, that's the pitfalls we were running into. Let's request that from SAP. We need those information and we needed help from them that they can help us with that, making it better, for example. Learn from each other. Just work close together. At the end, you're both IT. And the company relays on you.
I love it. Learn from each other, right? That's why we have Mr. Julian on the show, and I think I will have him because we need to deep dive. This is again such a great important topic, but it's still, I would say, I guess overlooked, not even thought about it, like in the whole transformation journey. It just, so if you even ask the customers who are on those S4 and BTP, if you ask, do you have firewall? Do you have this? They may not have all those answers, right? So I think this is definitely a worth of just 1 hour session or maybe more, Julian, if you agree. But I want to touch your personal journey. I know it's something we didn't go. I want to know more about you. That's something I do with all my guests. Maybe early part of the show, but maybe we'll end with that for you because you're special. So how does a basis person, I know you have reported vulnerabilities. I saw your name on one of the security patch days. So you do a lot of the work. I think there's a whole OAups project, which we'll probably cover in the episode as well. But I want to know, how does a basis person become the Julian of today, who kind of understand SAP from infra, from network, from, I don't know, from all this hacker mindset or whatever. So I want to know how does, or maybe how someone watching can become like you if they are a basis person today, what they can do or what they can learn from you. So I want to hear more about it, Mr. Julian.
Well, that's a long journey. So maybe a quick jump out. So I think in the early 2000s, I got my first PC where I started with Linux. And so the thing here is why Linux is my dad was developing ISDN card drivers for the Linux kernel. So, and he believed that Linux is much better than Windows, which at that age, I definitely disagreed, because try to run a game on Linux in the early 2000s, like, no. I think there were free games or so at that time. But that was like my first touch point, and he also taught me a lot or tried to teach me at that age about programming, which, well, think about a 6 or 8 year old kid, and it's not that really interested. But to be honest, later in the time, I started with around 16, getting then into computer, getting my first job there, having my training. And there I then figured, okay, infrastructure is pretty cool. I have a lot of fun. To be honest, I started with Linux and VMware administration and as a trainer and consultant. So those were the two parts. So, well, I liked it. Was pretty fun. I had a lot of cool projects there. But suddenly my CEO of the time for the company always would come around, hey, we need someone in SAP. Want to look into that? It's like, well, yeah, sounds funny. Well, I didn't know what SAP was at that time. So I digged into SAP, and also at the same time I started getting more and more interest in security. What is that? How can I break into other computers? What can I do? It was that Windows 7 around, yeah. And did play around. Also started with playing CTF at that part. That's a big thing, and you can have a lot of fun with that. And trying to break, for example, into your school network was pretty easy at that time. Gives you some free days. And that was basically starting, I would say. Well, yeah, that evolved over time. So I got more and more into SAP, figured out there's a huge security gap, especially around infrastructure and the knowledge, because I have the feeling that SAP security is aging a little bit out. So there are many people. I mean, you had many of them on the show already, but they know a lot and they have changed a lot what we call SAP security today. But I have the feeling they have so much stuff in their brain no one else has in the meantime. And it's like nowhere documented. And it's also hard. You need to figure it out yourself. So I would just say most of my free time I'm spending then sitting there and digging into other things like how did the SAP work. I think at the highest time I had about 30 SAP systems running at home, playing around with them. Also how the infrastructure works, high availability and all the parts. And yeah, in the meantime, I'm doing that for my living, for Fortinet, building products and finding ways to secure SAP more from the infrastructure layer. And in the rest of the time, I either take care of the family or being in the OWASP project you mentioned and providing tools and knowledge for everyone else in open source style. Because I think it's a huge domain and it's a lot of fun. Breaking things.
So try to break things, try to learn new. I think you have to have that passion, right? It shows in what you do, because is it what keeps you going, what you're doing? Because I feel like not everybody, they always complain, okay, I don't love my job and this. But I feel like if you have that passion and the purpose, sense of purpose as you do, is this what keeps you driving and become or help you become who you are?
To be fair, it's really like I love what I do. It's really that's what it's. I love what I do. I have a lot of fun. For sure, there are moments where I think maybe my next life I will take care of trees or so. That makes my life much easier. But it's also if you do not have the pressure to do something, but it's like on interest, reading a book, trying out things, maybe getting a new perspective on something. Yeah, it's just like looking into that. That's also how we found the vulnerability. It was like, what is that feature? What can it do? Let's look into that and let's dig into that. Before I wasn't that great in reverse engineering. I doubt I'm still, but I learned a lot on how to reverse engineer Windows applications and break the cryptography on that. It was super interesting, learned a lot and had a lot of fun. Yeah.
Before I let you go today, this was amazing. I do want to hear more from your brain. I want to go inside your brain as well, just to because I feel like that's the one area I is this so much fun, but at least it doesn't come to me naturally. I come from more from the governance. I think network security has been one area I feel like there's lot I can learn from you. So we'll have you again. So if somebody wants to reach out to you, how do they reach out? Is it LinkedIn is the platform or any other way to reach out to you?
The easiest would be LinkedIn.
Okay.
Just look for my name, or maybe you will put the link in the description. Or the
Okay.
alternative is you usually find us on our OWASP project on the Discord.
Okay.
There you can also reach out, and 99% you will find me there as well. For example, we have an SAP Security Notes bot there. On every patch day, you get automatically notified about the new patches.
Yeah, we have to deep dive on the OAuth project, I think, for sure. We want to hear more about
that's
it.
the whole episode. And I think, to be fair, I think someone should interview you of all that governance part. Because that's a full black box for me. That's I have no idea about that. That would be something niche.
Yeah, so this podcast is for me to learn it. So, but yeah, we can do it other way around too. But before I let you go again, Julian, we will again have you on the show. Any last advice? Any last thing you wanna say to the audience, just from your network and infra and whatever, maybe for the SAP audience?
Don't be shy. Speak to your infrastructure guys. They're also just humans. That sometimes they don't like donuts, but just an idea. But just ask them for help and just work together. It's always a team effort. You're usually not alone. And it's important because at the end, it's the same company you're working for. It's your salary that comes from the company. It's work together to make it secure. And also maybe you can offload even some tasks to the other teams from you. I think that's one of the biggest parts. Just break that silo and work together. And please patch your SAP systems and don't expose them to the internet like many companies do. We will speak about that in the OWASP episode, why you shouldn't do that.
Thank you, Julian. Thank you for coming on the show. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, just to hear and the passion, the purpose you bring. It does show on your energy, on your everything you're doing. So you're somebody I always follow, I always appreciate, and I always love sharing stage with you, sharing screen with you, learning from you. And I have more questions for you, which probably I will reach out as well. And again, thank you for coming on the show, and we'll again have you on the show. Maybe many
Thank
more. I
you.
don't think even 2 episodes would be suffice. I think we need to do more, like maybe every month one. I don't know, Julian, if you agree, but I think we need to just this is a
Sure.
topic. Okay.
Sure. Let's please monthly one of that. I'm happy. Maybe even the viewers or the listeners have questions.
Okay.
Let's speak on that. But hey, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to being here first of all, and I really love what you started with the podcast. It's awesome. Think that that's really valuable, and yeah, hey, happy to do more, and always a pleasure to do something together with you. There's a reason why we engage so often together.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a reason for sure. So thank you, Julian. I will see you again. Take care. Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.